Dave, thank you again for joining us on our next Thought Leader Spotlight Series piece. Again, I'm Matt Camp with DealMachine. I have here today Dave Van Horn. You might know him from speaking at a conference that you've been to. He has books. He's on, Bigger Pockets. He's, very, very involved in trying to educate people about, a variety of things here. So I'm very excited to kind of hear his thoughts on the latest within, especially within the world of how to think through leverage. So Dave, maybe can you give us just a minute about your background to start off, and then I might dig in a little bit there.
A minute. Basically, I manage several mortgage investment funds that invest in 1 to 4 family residential mortgages nationwide. We also do some commercial, hard money seed funding and transactional funding as well, but mostly in the non-performing note and mortgage space. So it's a real estate backed asset, just like investing in real estate. I'm also a real estate investor too. So, and that's probably it, if that makes, hopefully that's clear to everybody.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think what I really enjoyed from our previous conversations too, and hearing you talk about a variety of topics within the real estate investing world was the topic of leverage. So maybe can you give a little bit of background for our audience too of, how to think about leverage and maybe, what people are getting wrong there and hopefully change their mindset a little bit about the idea of leverage?
Yeah, well, when I look back on, two areas come to mind when you ask that is, one is when I look back on things, what led to being successful here or there, and it was all through the use of leverage over the years. And then I have a business coach out of the New York area. He's actually an author, Lewis Schiff, who wrote the book Business Brilliant. He was coaching me for a couple of years, and one of the things he would ask me repeatedly would be, what's the one thing that's going to catapult you or your business, you personally or your business in the next 6 to 12 months? What's that one thing you're going to leverage to catapult you? And it could be a JV partner, it could be technology, it could be education, it could be capital, and it changes as your business evolves or your personal life evolves. These things change. What I found out was interesting. He's a pretty high-end coach, and yet he would ask me the same question every time I went to see. So the question didn't change, but my answer to the question changed. But it does get you to think on, to be focused and kind of goal oriented. And what's the one, Gary Keller does it in his book, The One Thing. What's the one thing? All the other stuff, what's the one thing you should really be focusing on this hour, this quarter, this day, this year, this week, this month, that kind of thing. And we do a lot of that with my company as well. But it does start to get you really focused on what you should be doing that's going to move the needle the most. And it also cuts through all the noise and clutter, and because we tend to get busy, but busy doing what? Right. And then it's also a time management kind of thing too,
Yeah. I know you kind of touched on, that how you think about that one thing might be the result of maybe a more narrow view of real estate. And that people are potentially missing the financial side of it. So could you maybe talk about to our audience a little bit how they should be thinking about the financial side of the business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the financial side, leverage for me through real estate was kind of what led me to where I am. And then I started to really look at the finance side of the real estate business and how it was more scalable and more manageable than some of the hard real estate. Nothing against hard real estate. I own a lot, and I will probably always own a lot, but the way we own it and the way we manage it, and if you manage the finance side, you might not have to deal with as many of the headaches on the real estate side if you structure things correctly, right? But in the very beginning, I know for me, I was a very simplistic real estate guy, right? I was a contractor in the day and was a realtor at nights and weekends. And I would save my real estate money to buy houses. And my goal was to buy 1 house a year back then, and then it kind of morphed into, I want 20 houses free and clear. And then it came to, I want 100 units. Then it came to, I want apartments, right? And I went down all these different paths, and at different points, I would use different types of leverage. And in the very beginning, the first real form of leverage was obviously the bank. I bought a duplex owner occupied with FHA financing, and I still own that today. I bought that in 1989, give you color. And, it's funny, I was using bank financing, and then later on you max out the bank, and then I was using credit cards. I'd buy a house with a credit card, fix it up with a credit card, move a tenant in, refinance the house, pay the credit cards off. Next thing you know, I had 400 grand in credit cards, and then all my properties jumped up in value, and I started doing equity lines. Next thing you know, I had 11 equity lines, and I became a lender. I'd lend money out, or I'd use, borrow money out of my houses to go do the next deal. But later on, I realized how dangerous some of these things were, and I kind of changed some of my strategies today of what I do and what I don't do. But really, it was, if you think about it, I was using the bank's money, I was using the credit card money, which is the bank's money. And then I morphed into private capital, using private money from people's lines of credit or retirement accounts, things like that, self-directed IRA type stuff. And then morphed into raising private equity for syndications. Did mobile homes and storage and commercial office condos that were new construction. And then I morphed into the note business, mortgages, buying distressed debt. And that happened prior to 2007, where I started to get interested in that, I guess about 2004. And then obviously we went through some of the crash, and there was an abundance of distressed debt. And being a realtor at that time period was not a good thing, because all my business was investor related at the time. So my business went from, I was selling about 75, 80 houses a year as a Remax agent. That went down to 7 houses a year. That's the impact, right? And my partner, John, was a lender. He was my investor friendly lender at the time. Well, that went to hay in a handbasket. And next thing you know, we said, hey, what side of the business you want to be on? And we got into the distressed debt space just by accident, really. I used to run a real estate event, this prior to Meetup. And the event actually grew very big, and I would interview the speakers. And one of the speakers was someone raising capital out of New York to buy pools of mortgages. And of course, I didn't do anything for probably 3 years. But then after a while, we were like, hey, if you show us how to work this distressed debt, we'll buy assets from you. And then the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people listening to this today from our audience will be much more on that investor side and kind of, potentially new into it, and, reading a lot of things and thinking about getting into it. If you were redoing that whole journey today, what would you have done differently, and how would you think about that differently versus having been through it now?
I would have thought bigger sooner, and I would have utilized more. Especially like I had a We Buy Houses business for a while, a couple of years, and I was always reluctant to use hard money. I always tried to use my own money, or I would be slower to the game, and I wouldn't use. I had a buddy one time who did 39 hard money deals, and today he has hundreds of houses, and his first 39 deals were hard money deals. And one day I'm out to lunch with the guy, and I'm like, what would possess you to do 39 hard money deals? That's ridiculously expensive, blah, 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 right? And he's like, well, no, you don't understand. As you do it, it was very easy. And he goes, after a while, it was like just routine. And he said, the terms got more favorable the more I used it. And also, I was making money on the draw. And I was like, what's that mean? And he goes, well, if it was 10 grand in repairs and I got it done for 6, I put 4 grand in my pocket because it was a loan. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, well, that's game changing, to get 4 grand tax free. And then when I go to refi or sell, I'm getting that back anyway, because it looks like it's built into the loan that they're replacing. I'm like, I never thought of that. So here I am knocking something that was a lot better than I thought when I really sat down and dug deeper into it with somebody that was doing it. And if you notice, a lot of your hard money lenders, that's the note business, and I'm in the note business. That's a version of the note business. Well, why do they do that? I have one buddy who has over 500 houses, and, he has a hard money lending company because he put a commercial line on his properties. Next thing you know, he's a lender. And I have another buddy like that too. He has like 1,500 houses, right? So, they eventually morph into management companies or something
Mhm.
else because it just makes sense after a while. You know what I mean? So, and being a
Yep.
lender is easier than owning 1,000 houses, right? It's much easier to get to a couple hundred houses than start to be a lender, maybe, as opposed to owning, a lot more houses, right? And banks figured that out a long time ago, right? Why do you think Bank of America doesn't have, 30 million houses? They might have 30 million mortgages, right? So,
Right. Yep. Yeah, and I think the creativity behind that business model kind of speaks to a quote that you quoted last time we caught up was really saying like, hey, we don't lack resources necessarily, we lack resourcefulness. So
yeah.
how to think through your creative options and things like that. Do you have any other advice there for beginners in real estate investing on that mindset?
Yeah, I do. And it's really, it's going to sound kind of funny, but it's really knowing yourself. And
Hmm.
for me, to be honest with you, I probably didn't know myself till I was in my 40s and early 50s. And we're really not taught to learn about ourselves or know ourselves or come to
Sure.
grips with ourselves. And really what it is I'm really only good at like one or two things, but I'm
Hmm.
really, really good at them. And the rest of the stuff, yeah, I'm not the guy, like I'm never going to be a great golfer or guitar player or speak French or, yeah, I can putz around at it. I'm just never going to be good at that. And it's
Hmm.
really knowing yourself and knowing what that is and then hiring the rest to do the rest, right? Like I'm more of a visionary, like I'm a horrible operations person probably. That's just not my DNA.
I
And
see.
I
Yeah.
think when you know that, it makes things a lot better because then you can go, hey, let me go partner with that
Yeah.
person
Now you
that
know
is.
what you need. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, I was good at the raising capital side, or I was good at I used to be a property manager. I was a contractor before. I owned a title company. So there were certain aspects that I was good at. And then there were certain things I wasn't that good at. I was good at sales. I was a good salesperson,
Hmm.
but not everybody's a good salesperson. Some people are horrible salespeople, right? So it's
Yeah.
just knowing that, and then and then using, leveraging the resources of what you're not good at. I'm not saying never try to, fix some of your flaws or anything. I don't mean it that way, but a lot of times you're wasting a lot of time in some of the things that you're focusing on something that you really shouldn't be doing. And then here's the toughest one: things that you're good at that you really still shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? That's the tough one. And that's really where that one thing comes in, where,
Yeah.
yeah, I can do, it's like, well, at first you're trying to find, I call it the triage of awesome, is where it's like picture three circles that intersect each other. One circle is things you're good at making money at, things you like to do, and then what's the other one? Things that you're passionate, but it's
Yep.
this triage of things, right? And then we tend to do two out of the three, or whatever. But sometimes there's things, even though we're good at them, we can make money at them, but we probably still shouldn't be doing them, and we might like to do it, but it might not be the best thing that we could be doing sometimes. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
How do you go about identifying that? Is it lack of passion, or is there other signals to know that's not probably what you should be spending your time on?
I think a lot of it comes back to knowing what you want. And a lot of us don't spend enough time with like everything from types of goal setting or circling back to see how things went. Like, are you
Hmm.
reviewing your week? Are you reviewing the month? Are you reviewing the quarter? Are you reviewing the year?
Yeah.
My company has a 10-year vision. It's hard to think 10 years out. Most people don't think 10 days out. They're thinking about their next vacation or something,
Right.
which I do that too. But I think it's, and I'm not saying you have to plan your life till you're 150, but you want to have, well, if you don't have any kind of direction, guess what? You're not going to go anywhere, If you
Yep.
don't have a map, you're not going to get there, kind of thing. But I think you do need to take stock and look back. And then I think it changes as you change. I've been married, I have kids, I have grandkids, like things evolve. And it's just like this, I call it the football game of life. What my needs were at age 25 are much different than 45, than 60, like
Yep.
what your outlook is, your time horizon, your risk tolerance, all these things change. Now, sure, I'm at a lot of real estate investors, for example, I call it, you're in accumulation mode for a long period of time. Then you start to get like my age and you start to become more in preservation mode. And, your strategies tend to be different. And then there's people that are midlife crisis where I didn't save enough money and then are trying to make up for lost time. And then they have to go into all kinds of risky stuff, and then a lot of, and then you have some instant gratification folks in the early years. They don't want to, but if you pay the piper a little bit in the beginning, it can be well worth it later on. And I call it investing intentionally. A lot of times I see, I don't want to call it mistakes. I guess it would be judgment calls, like things you choose between, especially between like age 25 and 35, where maybe you take on too much housing than you should, or you take on too much debt than you should, or you buy more car than you need, or whatever that is. And you realize it's not really making a big difference today, but later on it does. It's like I'm from Philly, right? If you eat a cheesesteak once, it's not going to kill you. But if you eat a cheesesteak every day, you're going to be dead.
Right.
You're going to be 1,000 pounds. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that, the compound effect, right? With Darren Hard. But it's the same way with our money and and think about housing. It's your biggest expense and how we invest intentionally. So I'll give you an example of, I was investing intentionally without even knowing I was doing it. And then later on, and years later, I look back, I go, oh, that's why I catapulted past certain people, relatives or whatever, people that were in the same category as me early years. And then now I'm, why am I way over here? And it's this compound effect of doing things a little differently along the way. And one of them was, I didn't buy the maximum house when I was young. I bought an owner-occupied duplex, right? And kept it as a rental. And I intended that from day one. I knew exactly how long I was going to live there, and I lived there exactly that period of time. Then I moved into the next property, and I kept that as a rental. And I did the same thing. My first 4 properties were all rentals, even after I lived in them. So I got owner-occupied financing. I got a lower rate. I lived there a little while. I paid down the mortgage, right? All these things were happening. I had more write-offs because, I could write off the carpet or this or that, So a lot of my peers weren't doing that. They're like, paying for everything out of pocket, things like that. Whereas even today, I look at my assets, pay all my liabilities, for example. I paid my son's college for 1/3 of the money by buying a discounted mortgage. And the payment from the mortgage paid his payment on his student loan. And we paid for college for 1/3 of the money. So you can do the same thing. If my wife wanted a new car, I wouldn't go reach in my pocket and pay for it. I'd go, oh, what asset do I need to pay for my wife's car from the cash flow of the asset? Or you're just thinking a little bit differently.
It's shifting your mindset of how you see.
Shifting your mindset.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was, and then I've used notes to accumulate assets. More strategically, I've used notes to accelerate pay down of debt. You can do that as well. I can tap into the equity of properties and go invest it in something else to improve the cash flow from that property. So say I have a property that's in a vacation area, or it's an expensive property that doesn't really cash flow. Once I get a little equity, I can borrow out the equity, invest it in something else that's higher yielding, and the combination gives me the cash flow I need, right? So you don't have to always be stuck on, well, it doesn't work in my neighborhood. There's ways to make things work by moving things around,
Yeah. Well, perfect, Dave. Yeah. I really appreciate you, kind of inspiring people to think a little bit differently, think a little bit more strategic and longer term, and have a plan like that. So thanks again for coming on today. Excited about sharing this out, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.